Oh, let's do it live on a Victory Monday edition of the program. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. This reminds me of a time about a year ago when one Jim Rome said the Cleveland Browns were America's team, and I said, nay.
Nay!
As I often do, and looked right into the camera, almost as if I was doing a WWE promo, and said, nay, world's team.
And then you said, you're welcome.
World's team. You're welcome. What a moment.
What a moment for you. What a moment for the Browns. Third week in a row. 1-0 for the week, as Kevin Stefanski likes to say. 3-1 on the season. First time since
How about
2001.
This t-shirt? Tell the people.
Oh,
I can't be on the stream.
he's
but
not on the stream, but he's got the World's Team t-shirt on, and you love to see it in the first quarter. A lot of people were calling for it on Twitter. They say, bring back the World's Team. We want to hear you talk about the World's Team once again. I said, easy. Let's just go 1-0 every week. That's what Kevin Stefanski says. Just go 1-0 every week. All bite, no bark. And quite frankly, we were biting all over the Dallas Cowboys. And I really feel, and we'll get into all the different stuff, the Hoff, Joe Thomas is going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour for the Joe Thomas hour. But those first three quarters were the best three quarters of Browns football I've seen in my time here with this team since 2013. The only game I could think of in my mind that was even similar was maybe week 5 in 2014 when the Browns beat the Steelers 31-6. I want to say the final score was here at First Energy Stadium.
Yeah.
But this game, this spotlight, those stars all shining so bright. Kevin Stefanski just playing games with Mike Nolan, the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. I see our guy Grant Delpit walking through. It's a wonderful day. There he is. Good to see him. Good to see him. But it was just
an embrace.
I wish we could. It would have been a nice moment. Just a real good, complete game. And I'll say one thing that stood out to me where you say, why does it feel different? The thing that feels different the most was what happened at the end of the first half into the second half. That's what great teams do. You get the ball at your own 10, 4 minutes to go. You salt away all that clock. You kick a field goal to go up 31-14. Then you get the ball and you go right down the field, finishing that drive in a touchdown, 38-14. And while the game provided, some palpitations, some anxious moments, because I was saying it was 41-14 at the start of the fourth quarter, and that felt like 2 weeks ago by the time that game had concluded. But they handled their business once again. Odell spectacular. The ground game. We'll talk about the historic performance by the Browns on the ground. The line. It was great. It was great.
It was. And I think what makes this feel different is that this was something, and I used this last week a lot. Opportunity. There's a tremendous opportunity here for the Browns to go down to Dallas and take care of business and kind of prove a point and to close the first quarter at 3-1. If your stated goal is get to the postseason, you had to have a couple of 3-1s in one of these four quarters, and they got a 3-1 here. And so now you get through this first quarter at 3-1. You enter the second quarter of the season. You heard Baker talk about this last night on the program, but the opportunity to go down to Dallas and win. This did not feel fluky.
No.
And that's the thing that is really different to me than some of the other outlier performances that I've seen from the franchise in the last 15, 20 years. There's nothing fluky about this. This was comprehensive. This was earned. This was building towards this. This was we've seen little steps here and there against a little less competition than this Cowboys team is, certainly offensively. But this was building towards this. This was something that was in the works. And to watch it through, to see it through, to go on the road down to Dallas against a team that needed it desperately, that has high hopes of being a team that can make some noise in the NFC and now sees themselves at 1-3. You knew they were going to throw it everywhere, but there was nothing fluky about it. Everything was earned. If you think about the way that you win the game, it's up front. It is up front. It is a dominant offensive line play, the likes of which I don't know if we've ever seen around here, the way that this offensive line is getting stuff done with Bill Callahan right now. I don't know if we've ever seen it. Beyond that, though, it's your best player, your best physical player, Myles Garrett, blowing up the game with that play. And now you say to yourself, this is 3 straight games where he gets strip sack, fumble, recovery. He was outstanding in the game. The 2 turnovers flipped it. The two turnovers flipped the entire game. But then to capitalize, and to your point, end of the half, to do what we did at the end of the half, to finish it the way you finished it, this was earned. This was nothing like, man, I don't know what we're going to do this week, but that was sure fun for a week. This is building on something. This is a foundation that is made of brawn with brick and mortar.
The last 2 weeks, you go 41-0 against your opponents in the second quarter.
Yep.
You are playing tremendous football. You've been up big in all 3 of your last 3 games. Now, what we need to get, the final part of that will be to finish it on the defensive side of the ball and to truly slam the door. But you're talking about, this was still a double-digit win on the road against the Cowboys. Last week was still a double-digit win at home against the Washington football team. And the Washington football team, by the way, was right there, same margin against the Ravens. So this team, it doesn't feel fluky because you can see what the path to success is. You're scoring every single week now, 3+ with 30+ on the offensive side of the ball. It doesn't feel fluky at all because it's built in a traditional football model. You have a head coach who is completely even keel. And by the way, you can say that it's obviously, it's not flatline's the wrong word, but just even keel, calm, confident, in control. But he is aggressive. He is ruthless. At the end of the game, really on our second-to-last possession, on 2nd and 4, we ran a play-action shot play where Odell was wide open. If it just weren't for a great individual effort by DeMarcus Lawrence to get his hand on Baker, he was going to try to put the game away right there. And then on the final drive, we ran the exact same play. It was the exact same reverse. The exact same reverse from early in the game. The only difference in this one was, on the first one, Jarvis went in motion across the formation. This time, Jarvis just started there. They ran the exact same play, and Odell did the rest. But you talk about your stars. Odell, 3 touchdowns. Jarvis, what a throw. I mean, I don't think by the way, that's the only completion of more than 20 yards in the air for the Browns in each of the last 2 games. And it was Odell Beckham Jr. who threw it for you. It was, Jarvis Landry, I'm sorry. It was an absolute rocket.
Do you think people know he's left-handed? I think people forget he's left-handed.
Maybe in the middle of the game they do.
Because when you see a receiver coming back, you're not thinking, oh, he's going to throw it. Because I think people forget he's left-handed.
It was a rocket. It was a rocket to Odell Beckham Jr. The ground game. Nick Chubb went out of this game with 6 carries for 43 yards. And the Browns ran for 307 yards, most in an NFL game in 2 years. The only teams that have ever run for as many yards as the Browns have through the first 4 weeks of the season had either Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson. We're doing it without a running quarterback. It's what's happening up front. Dearness Johnson steps in, goes 13 for 95 on you. It's unbelievable.
It reminds you very much of what. And I'm not saying that we're on the level of these teams, but it reminds you very much, not yet anyway, it reminds you very much of what the 49ers were able to do last year, where it didn't matter who the running back was. And of course it's the same offense, so it ought to remind you of that. It reminds you of those late 90s, early 2000 Broncos, where it doesn't matter who the running back is. Now, unfortunately, we're going to be out without Nick Chubb for several weeks with this MCL, which is news that's coming down today, and that is a bit of a damper on all of this because we all love Nick Chubb and we know how special he is.
Yes.
The good news is you still have Kareem Hunt, who is an A-plus back. So you had 2 of them, and that's just frankly good planning to be able to have 2 of those guys on the roster. But what I saw from Dearness Johnson getting 95 yards at 7 yards a clip, and even Dontrell Hilliard. And some of this, we averaged 7.7 yards a carry, and that's not even doing it justice, because through the 3 quarters, I think it was over 9. And then as to salt the game away in the fourth, we were just basically running into 9-man fronts. At that point, the yards per carry came down. But through 3 quarters, it was almost 9 yards a carry. And that is a system. That is a lead offensive line play, and that is a system.
You go back to the Denver Broncos with Mike Shanahan and what they were able – it didn't matter. It was like whoever came in, Tatum Bell, Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson, Terrell Davis, guys who at that point – it's not like they had huge pedigrees. Right. Then all of a sudden they're megastars, and that's what Clinton Portis – that's what this offense can do. But we went back and we watched the tape, and we'll talk about it with Joe Thomas. Dearness Johnson did more than was blocked for him. He ran.
Yeah, he was great.
He had so many great runs, and he's a guy throughout training camp. You know, we were talking about that battle. It's Dearness or Dontrell Hilliard. I'd planted my flag. You were right there with me in the Dearness side of it. I just think that he's got an opportunity to really be a very good, very special player. And for the Browns to be able to run for over 300 yards even take Beckham's 73 out of it and take Chubb's 43 out of it. You still ran for 190 yards with Dearness Johnson, Kareem Hunt, Dontrell Hilliard in this game, which is incredible. And Kareem Hunt clearly, to me, and we'll probably, I don't know if we will get some clarity on this from Coach Stefanski, but the fact that he wasn't in there much in the third and fourth quarter says he's not quite 100%, and they're just going to be cautious with him at the point where the game was very much an advantageous one for the Browns. But Dearness looks great, and this offense, it's not just the blocking of the line. The line's spectacular. Every day you can put on there, there's a Wyatt Teller highlight block. There's a Bitonio highlight block. There's a Treader. There's a Wills. There's a Conklin. The tight ends, Hooper and Bryant, are incredible. And I'll say this, receivers? Donovan Peoples-Jones threw two guys on the ground, and on Kareem Hunt's long touchdown run, he walked his guy into the end zone. He is a man-child out there. They didn't throw him the ball once. Didn't throw the rookie the ball once. But you go back, you go to Pro Football Focus, I think this is an unbelievable stat. You go to the run blocking grades for the Cleveland Browns. Run blocking grades. Number 1 was Wyatt Teller, 95. Number 2 was Jack Conklin, 92. Number 3 on the team was Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is Pro Football Focus at 80. He was on the play for 33 snaps, 13 routes, 19 run blocks, and 1 pass block. And the guy was a force in the run blocking game. But Odell's doing it down the field. Jarvis wipes out 2 guys on that reverse. Just the team effort, the nature of it. Janovich is the fullback. Incredible. Kevin Stefanski has these guys, as they say, rowing in the same direction every play, and it's just spectacular to watch. And Stump Mitchell, first of all, Bill Callahan, praise his name. Unbelievable job. Stump Mitchell, praise his name, because the vision, the patience, the way these guys have adjusted to this system and are getting the most out of every run is simply spectacular. And guess what? When you go watch this all 22, you'd say there's a lot more this offense could do. We just scored 49, and you'd watch that tape and say, we probably should have scored 65.
Yes, just to say what Mike Nolan was doing in the secondary was hard to wrap your head around would be an understatement. It was pretty insane what Mike Nolan was doing in the secondary. I'll give you some more stats. I saw this from Field Yates, and it's all incredible. So the 820 yards rushing an NFL high from the Browns through 4 games. This is an incredible stat. 30 rushes of 10-plus yards per 30 rushes of 10-plus yards. That's 10 more than second best.
That's right.
385 rush yards before contact. 42 yards more than anybody else. And this is the one that was incredible. Yesterday, 4.6 yards on average before contact. And I'm telling you, that's misleading, because in the fourth quarter where you're trying to just run into those 9-man fronts and bleed clock, if you just keep playing the way you're playing the first 3 quarters, that number is significantly higher.
Well, and you look at Odell's first run, which went for, 30 or 29, 27, somewhere in there. He wasn't touched until the end of that run. Dearness Johnson's 28-yard run, his first carry of the game, was not touched until the end of that run. But you're right. At the end, you started running and slamming it in there. But just incredible
dominance.
Lead the league in rushing yards. Lead the league in rushing average. Lead the league in rushing touchdowns. And then this one, to me, another stat that you just top on it is you lead the league in points off of turnovers, 45 points off of turnovers. You have 10 takeaways, and you're averaging 4.5 points per takeaway. That's insane. That's ludicrous. That's bonkers. And you go back and you look at the red zone. And how about Kevin Stefanski again? Let me go ahead and just break tendency on you a couple times in the red zone for easy touchdowns, because we've been running it in the red zone 72% of the time. 72% of the time, most in the NFL. And now we're dominant. We're dominant. Running the ball, and then what we're going to get down there first and go. We're going to play action. You're going to let Odell have a free release? Okay, watch that release again, kids. Put that one in wide receiver school. Touchdown. Then the next time at the goal line, we're going to go play action on first down again, which we hadn't been doing. Touchdown to Austin Hooper. Then, now you're ready for the play action? We're going to bring Wyatt Teller around. He's going to crush a poor DB, and we're going to waltz Kareem Hunt right into the end zone. I just loved it. I loved it.
In a million years, would you have ever thought? I mean, Wyatt Teller right now is a all-pro right guard. He's the all-pro right guard.
He is
He's the first team all-pro. He's the best right guard in football through 4 games. It's early, I get it. But to think that 6 months ago we're going, he's going to be the starting right guard, and to have a guy play at this level, I just never seen somebody so comfortable with what they're being asked to do. He flies on those poles like a missile and annihilates people time and time again. It's really special to watch.
This offense plays right to his strengths, movement skills. Remember what he did against New England? When you see this guy in space, he's so good. And this plays to it.
Yeah.
But it's his confidence. It's Bill Callahan.
Yep.
It's putting Conklin next to him. But you can't say it's just Conklin because when Chubb was in there against Cincinnati, they were great. It's just the coaching they're getting is great. The scheme they are getting is great. And Joe's going to talk a lot about how we manipulated their defense with subtleties in terms of our alignments and our motions rather than shifts to get the looks we wanted. You got Harrison Bryant wham blocking a nose tackle into oblivion. I mean, what are we doing? Right. It's unbelievable to watch. But your point about Teller's one of the best players in the NFL right now.
That's right.
One of the best offensive linemen in the NFL.
Couple things we got to couple things, other things I want to get to before we take the first break. Number one, man, this felt good for Odell Beckham Jr. It felt good.
Yes.
This is what it had to feel good to see. I can't imagine what it felt for him to be healthy. I love the answer he was asked about catching the ball from Jarvis that took him back to their time at LSU, and that's his brother, and to be able to do that in the NFL. He is, and I mentioned this last week on the show when he broke up the pass. He is so loving this right now, and to have him and Jarvis hook up for that, and coach understanding that, let's run this play. I've had it here. I heard him post game talking about, hey, I've had this right there on the call sheet over and over, and I said it's time to run this thing. We're bringing it out this week. They probably knew it was going to be run, and to hit it like that for a touchdown, a perfect throw from Jarvis just on the screws, and then Odell just doing what Odell does beyond that, and then to seal it. This was to this point his defining moment as a Brown.
There's no question, and he looked very much like the superstar. And trust me, folks, when I tell you he could have had 200 yards receiving and 3 receiving touchdowns alone in this game, it's true. 4 receiving touchdowns in this game. It's true. There were more plays that he could have made, but for a variety of reasons didn't end up happening. But his route running right now is second to none. The separation he is generating is second to none. And you go back to that play. So I've known that one was in the hopper for a couple of weeks now. I think it is, and they ran it in practice with success. And what to me was so interesting about some of the comments, it seemed like Coach Stefanski gave a sit down to Ed Werder, because Werder kept coming out with these random quotes kind of over the weekend. I don't know if you noticed this from Coach Stefanski.
I did, yeah.
And one of them was, oh, yeah, well, they've had a lot of blown coverages on the back end, and, you can't count on that. You can't count on that. Well, you know how you manufacture a blown coverage on the back end? You show them something that they haven't seen all year long that was 100% designed to attack that safety. And guess what? They attacked him. They got it. And it was a touchdown for the Browns. Again, great route, great sell by Odell that it was just a little, stretch to that side. Then he turns it on, cuts it back to the corner. And then Jarvis. Folks, there are a lot of people that quote unquote have good arms. Okay? Take somebody, one of your friends out there who has a quote unquote good arm, and ask him to throw a 50-yard in the air pass as a laser, not as lofting it as high as you can, throwing it as a driving the football 50 yards, because Jarvis made that look easy. That's not easy.
No, it was an incredibly difficult throw. Last thing I wanted to get to, and that is Myles Garrett this offseason at one point signed the biggest defensive contract in the history of professional football. And you said to yourself, you just had a feeling you'd have a big year. Last year didn't end the way that he wanted. He is right now the defensive player of the year in professional football. That's what he is through a quarter of the season. This is why you drafted him. This is why you paid him. He is wrecking games, and he's creating these incredible changes in the game. And you saw it again. Dallas was humming until that point. They get the two turnovers back to back, and then they have to chase from that point on. But that strip sack by Myles Garrett on Dak Prescott, that allowed for much of what was to follow.
It's a tone setter, and he's done it 3 games in a row.
Yep.
That's what's so incredible. And now you can say, coming into this, he had 18 pressures, and he had, from Next Gen Stats, and he also had 4 direct plays where his pressure led to turnover. Well, according to Pro Football Focus in this one, we're talking about 8 more pressures for him, which would bring him to 26. We know the sack, strip, fumble. That's at least 5 now turnovers that are going to be directly attributable to him. Incredible start. You talked about it. Signed that contract. By the way, not only was that a great contract signing by Andrew Berry, how about locking up Kareem Hunt? Because in the event that something happened like what has just happened, Kareem Hunt's price tag at the end of this season was going to be a lot higher than what it was when he signed that deal. And that deal was a good one for Kareem. We know when you can get the money and you can lock it in, you do that. But that was a win-win both sides, and it's going to look like more of a win-win as this season goes on. But I just love, you talk about superstars. They're showing up every single game. It's the names that you know. It's the name that anybody who has any familiarity with the Browns knows. You put on the highlights, and it's like, yep, there's Odell. Yep, there's Jarvis. Yep, there's Chubb. Yep, there's Kareem Hunt. Yes, there's Baker Mayfield. Oh, on the defense. Yes, there's Myles Garrett. Oh, would you like Denzel Ward to come and finally just put a little lid on this thing? Sure, he'll come up with the interception.
Yeah, no, the big stars played big in a very, very big game with the light shining bright. You'll hear from Coach coming up next, the Hoff coming up in about 10 minutes. With yesterday's win, Tito's Handmade Vodka proud to support the Cleveland Browns through Tito's Victory Vodka program with a $1,000 donation to WEGS for Warriors, helping provide service dogs for veterans at no cost to the veteran. Thank you, Tito's, and remember to please enjoy Tito's Handmade vodka responsibly. Coach Stefanski up next, the Hoff in about 10 minutes, off and running here on a Victory Monday, Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Here for my great friends at Raising Cane's, and on game day, go for the win with Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. Stack your roster with delicious hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce. Huddle up with crispy, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, and buttery Texas toast, and top it all off with freshly made tea and lemonade. Visit the newest Raising Cane's location on Brook Park Road in North Olmsted, right behind Great Northern Mall. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love. Here was Coach Stefanski, some highlights of his meeting with the media from earlier today.
So I'll start with injuries. Nick Chubb has an injury. We'll be putting him on IR. It'll be a several-week injury. but we do expect him back this year. Knowing Nick, he's going to work very hard in rehab, and so I know that's hard to see your teammate go down like that, but knowing Nick, he will work his butt off to get back. Larry has an oblique injury. We'll see how that goes throughout this week. And then Cordero Hodge has a hamstring, and that is really week to week, and we shall see on that one. Just recapping again, yesterday, a good team win. You know, the guys are playing very, very hard. I think that shows up on tape. They're really straining to finish. And then I think you can start it and end it right there at +3 in the turnover margin. It's such a big deal in terms of winning and losing. But I will take any questions.
Yeah, Kevin, any more context on, you said several weeks, is that, potentially a month?
Honestly, Jake, I think we got to see how it goes. With Nick Chubb, I hesitate to put a number of weeks on it. I don't know, but it'll be several weeks.
Hey, Coach, is it safe for the offensive line and the scheme that you can plug and play, and with the depth at running back, a Ernest Johnson, Dontrell Hilliard plug in, hadn't really played, and go for about 120 yards between them?
I mean, that was good to see, Fred, with those guys stepping up. Like you mentioned, the offensive line and the tight ends and the wide receivers, they're all straining. And the runners were, running through arm tackles and breaking tackles. So that was good to see. But you lose a player of Nick's caliber, we're going to need those guys to step up really across the entire offense.
Kevin, I'd like to switch over to the other side of the ball. On the defensive side, what needs to be cleaned up? I know, they ran up like 566 or whatever it was. What's first order of business over there?
Yeah, there's some things we can do better, Tom. It's always it always goes back to alignment, assignment, and technique. And there's things I know the guys can clean up, and the coaches are going to work hard on that with them. You get in that game, and you're going to have to apply pressure to the quarterback. You're going to have to find a way to get off. And just late in that fourth quarter, we couldn't find a way to get off. But I got to tell you, those guys are straining. I mean, they are flying around the field. Guys are giving us great effort. We got our hands on a few balls that we didn't come down with. That's part of it. And I understand that I'm being greedy because they got us 3, but we got to make sure that we're really trying everything we can to get our hands on the ball and secure those interceptions.
Hey, Kevin, I got a couple quick injury things for you. Will Nick have to have surgery?
No.
Okay. And how did Kareem come through the game with that groin?
He came through pretty good. That dude's a warrior. I love watching that guy play. To make it to that game and then perform how he did, team player all the way. Really proud of him.
And last one, Sheldon walked off late in the game. Is he okay?
Yes.
One other injury thing, and then I got another question. Are you guys going to get David Njoku back this week?
I think we will, yes.
And just in terms of with Nick going out and what we saw happen when Ernest got his opportunity.
1 minute left.
Got some opportunities behind him. Just how much confidence do you have that you guys are going to be able to keep running the ball the way you want to, even though Nick Chubb, as good as he is going to be out for a while?
Yeah, like you said, Nick's tough to replace, obviously. But we got to just make sure we put a game plan together today and tomorrow with the coaches, and then find a way to move the rock any which way we can. And I trust that we'll put that plan together.
30.
Trust the guys will step up when they're called upon.
And on that end around that went for the touchdown, do you consider that a risky play call when it looks like you could have lost 14 yards if something went the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, the risk in thinking about the result of these plays, it's really, I try to just think about the process of what got him.
10 seconds.
You're right, if he gets tackled, it's a dumb call. What am I thinking? So at the end of the day, I trust our guys, I trust the players, and that's really where my focus.
All right, you guys are up.
And that's exactly what it looks like. Great pleasure coming up next. The Hop will join us, the Joe Thomas Hour, for 1 full hour. My guess is he'll be just absolutely giddy about what he saw from his offensive line buddies in the game against the Cowboys. He will join us next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. For a team of injury lawyers dedicated to every client every day, call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns, and it is the Joe Thomas Hour. We like to call it the Hoff Hour around here. Joe Thomas, College Football Hall of Famer, soon to be first ballot NFL Hall of Famer.
That's
My
right.
words, not yours, Joe. Other than the college, that's known. Welcome in, my friend. This is a fun one.
Are we finally allowed to have some joy here, fellas? This is
Pure joy.
Victory Monday. Pure joy. So excited. Can't wait to be with you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Joe, let's just start right away because a pretty big impression is made right out of the gates. And Dallas says, well, you know you're going to run it. We say, yeah, we're going to run it. Why don't you watch us? And the way that we controlled up front, I have to imagine for someone such as yourself who played offensive line at the level you did, it had to be like watching an artist work. It had to be.
It was so much fun. I loved watching Kevin Stefanski's offense, and the game plan that he came up for this defense was just flawless. The way he would shift in motion and manipulate the Cowboys' defense to get favorable rushing lanes and to get favorable blocking angles was just spectacular. It was truly a work of art. And dare I say, Kevin Stefanski's finest moment as an offensive mind. Now, I didn't follow all that closely in Minnesota, but I'm not sure he had many 300-yard rushing days when he was the Vikings offensive coordinator. So this was surely something that was really special. And the only thing that I can remember that comes close to this during my career was we played at Kansas City like year 3, and we had close to 300 or right around 300 yards rushing, and it was a similar type day. And those boys, the feeling that they must have in that fourth quarter after absolutely steamrolling the Cowboys defense and front seven is just unmatched as an offensive lineman, because there's few things you can hang your hat on as an offensive lineman that's pure joy, except for when you're running the football at will against a team like the Dallas Cowboys.
Joe, it had to remind you of your time at Wisconsin. This is what the Badgers do.
I was going to say, this is exactly what the Badgers do to teams like Western Michigan and like Southern Missouri State, and where all the starters are leaving in the middle of the third quarter. That's when you rush for 300 yards. You don't do that in the NFL against professionals. I mean, this was just almost outrageous the way that they were rushing the ball at will against the Cowboys defense.
Joe, one of the guys we've talked a lot about, Wyatt Teller, and this is something that was just tweeted out by Pro Football Focus. Highest grade for a guard after 4 weeks since 2006. Number 1, Wyatt Teller, 94.1 in 2020. Number 2, wow. Evan Mathis in 2013. And number 3, Zach Martin in 2016. We know those other two guys were regarded around the league. But you mentioned this line, mentioned Stefanski. Get into it. We were in our film room today, and unfortunately, Beau's show got in the way of his ability to really participate in real time. But you and I, Joe, we were talking about it. What really stood out to you? Because you were explaining, saying we love when we get educated by the Huff. Educate the people, though, about the formations, the motions rather than shifts, and all the little things he was doing to set up advantageous run blocking for this team. And when I say for this team, I mean because it's not just the line, it's the tight ends, it's the receivers. We saw DPJ out there pancaking defensive backs. What happened? Talk us through it.
Well, it was beautiful. And what I love about the zone blocking scheme is because it's a thinking man's game, right? If you think about the old school concepts in pro football, why it was just such a tough, hard-nosed, blue-collar game, it was like the old Green Bay Packers sweep. It was just me versus you. I was just going to slam my face as hard as I could into you. And whoever got the most movement got a little bit of a crack for the running back to run through. And then if you had a guy like Jim Brown, he would just do the rest. And he would just run over guys because nobody could tackle him. Because back in those days, they didn't go and tackle your legs. They tackled you high, which was obviously a bad idea when you're Jim Brown and you're bigger than everyone else on the field. But in today's NFL, the zone blocking scheme is great. And why I call it a thinking man's game is because it's all about angles. It's all about speed. It's all about angles. It's like NASA, right? And so the reason an offensive coordinator in this scheme is so important is because each week you're game planning your formations and your shifts to try to get the angles you want from the defense. Now, a lot of times you have really smart defensive coordinators as well, and so it's a cat and mouse game. You're trying to set up things for your offense to have success, but it doesn't always work that well. But the reason I say this is Kevin Stefanski's masterpiece so far is because when you watched what he was doing, and Nathan and I and Beau this morning, we were sharing film, and I was trying to talk to him a little bit about like why we set the 3 receivers and the tight end maybe to the right on one play, because you'd get the defensive line to shift and line up in a certain position, and then instead of shifting out of that 3 receiver set, you just send one receiver in motion and you get a movement of the linebackers, but the defensive line doesn't move. They stay still. So then you're able to move the strength of your formation to get combination blocks that have favorable angles. And when you do that, it started at the very beginning of that game, watching Kareem and Nick Chubb run through holes that were about 4 yards wide. It was because of the setup of those plays and the blocking angles that the offensive line was able to get because of the way the Browns were able to set it up and then motion and get what they wanted from the defense. It was wonderful. Now, of course, you still have to execute. You still have to have a quality offensive line that's going to be able to run off the football and be physical and get people moving. But a lot of that was the genius setup from the offensive line, Bill Callahan, run game, and Kevin Stefanski putting their minds together. And whereas the first 3 weeks of the season, the Browns were a little bit more successful with some of those old school guard and center pull type plays, this week it was almost all that wide zone scheme that we've been talking about all offseason, and it was beautiful.
And Joe, you're talking about a level of specificity in the game planning that sounds very opponent specific to what you want to do, that from a common sense standpoint seems like it should be happening every week by every team in the NFL. You know this better than I do. I'm a little bit more removed from it. But that does not happen every week in the NFL, does it? And why is that so special, what we're seeing with Coach and obviously Bill Callahan helping him and the job he's doing with that line?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons, right? It's hard. It takes a higher level of understanding of running the football mentality and schematics that a lot of offensive coordinators don't have, right? Because typically if you look at the offensive coordinators in the NFL, their coaching tree has started usually as a quarterback's coach. And they move up to coordinator because they were really good at grooming a quarterback, or they were really good with route concepts because the quarterback threw for a lot of yards. But when we had Kyle Shanahan in 2014, he said he was a receiver in college, I think at Texas, and then obviously being around football his whole life. But he said he was bored with route concepts and the passing game because it was so easy. And the reason he loved the scheme that he ran is because of the complexities of the blocking angles and the motions and the shifts and the techniques that you need for all 11 guys on the offense to be able to be perfect and exactly in sync in order to have success in the run game. But when you do have this success, it looks like it did on Sunday, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's like a ballet. And so when you have a guy like Kevin Stefanski who's able to put that stuff together, it's just really fun to watch. And there's not that many offensive coordinators in the NFL that understand the run game like that. Like typically throughout my career, most offensive coordinators, they handled the passing concepts, and then the O-line coach would do the run game stuff, which, as you can imagine, if you have two chefs and neither of them are going and shopping for the groceries, you're going to have a hard time coming up with the same recipe that's good, that makes sense. And that's what happens a lot of times in the NFL is you have these passing concepts that are good by themselves. You have these running concepts that are good by themselves. But when you put them together in a run game, they don't make sense. And so defense doesn't get confused. We talked about Nathan on Browns Live earlier this season that the great part about the offense the Browns are running now is it puts defenses in conflict. It puts them between a poop and a sweat. They don't know where they are because everything from the beginning of the play looks the same. And that Jarvis pass to OBJ was the perfect example. To start out, it looked just like an outside zone. And then for a second, it looked like it was going to be a bootleg. And then they used that against the defense because as the defense is reacting to outside zone, now it's bootleg, they're using their rules against them to set up the big play over the top to OBJ. And it's just so fun to watch when you see those things married together perfectly. It truly is a ballet, and there's not that many teams in the NFL that do it that well because they're not just willing to commit to the run game like the Browns are.
Joe, you know what struck me, and we've had some fun wins over the last few years. Certainly, there was some in Baker's rookie year, the win last year in Baltimore. But you didn't know if it was sustainable. You'd celebrate one win. There was nothing fluky about this. This is a system. It starts up front, but it is a system that will be tried and true week in and week out. You can run the ball when you're playing this well up front. And we talk about Stefanski. I mean, you guys have been here a lot longer than I have, and you certainly remember Kyle and all of that. I've just never – he's such a rhythmic play caller. Everything he does is set up by something he did previously to keep the defense off balance. And it never seems like he's grasping for a play. Everything is intentional. and everything is built off of something that was done previously. And I'm assuming that's what it looks like when you watch Kyle call offense. Obviously in San Francisco, there's a few guys. McVay has that. It looks like Kevin Stefanski has that early on here.
Absolutely, and that's why this offense has the success that it has so far in the NFL. You mentioned Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. Right now, Stefanski's having a little moment in the sun because when this offense is clicking, which it has been, when your run game is clicking, everything works because everything kind of plays off of the run game. And once you get good at the run game, it becomes very difficult to stop. And I think that's kind of the secret to it. Is it an offense that relies on star power like the Chiefs? No. And I think that's the strength of it, right? Because if you're an offense that relies on your stars at, let's say, receiver or maybe just quarterback position, like injuries happen in the NFL, which obviously is a great risk, but also even great star players can get taken out of the game. Look what the Patriots have done to star players for eons. I mean, that's how they win every Super Bowl. It looks like you go into the game and there's this great offense and they're like, okay, we're just going to take away your two best things you do and make us beat you with your left hand. And teams a lot of times have a hard time doing that. But when you have a great system that fits together, that is more about the system and the team playing well together, it doesn't matter who you fit into those boxes. And it's been proven in this system for a long time with all the running backs that have become stars and household names that were kind of people that were, discarded from other programs. Look at when Kyle was in Washington. He had a guy named Alfred Morris, who was like a fourth-round pick, who was unbelievable. He set the league on fire. What was it, sixth round?
Yeah, and he led the league in rushing. Yeah.
Well, the league in rushing for like a boatload of years, and then Kyle left, and I don't think the guy played maybe one more year in Dallas, and he had like 400 yards rushing, maybe. But like the whole point is that this system, when it's used together, you teach everybody the system, and then the players are interchangeable. And as long as everybody buys into the team concept, which is something that I think people in Cleveland are really going to love because it's just such a Cleveland mentality. Like, it's all about the team. It's all about sacrificing your own personal success for the glory of the team. It works so well, and it's so beautiful, and it stands through the test of a tough season when you have to deal with the things that show up in the NFL, like injuries, and when guys that are your stars aren't playing like they should.
I mean, Dearness Johnson walks in 13 carries, 95 yards, and the patience and the vision is when we went through some of his runs, you could have said, I could have seen Nick Chubb do that. I could have seen Kareem Hunt do that. And to me, I don't know if that starts with Stefanski and the way that he tells these guys, I remember when college, they talked about tracks, how they were on their tracks and for their run plays. But, Stump Mitchell's got to get a lot of credit. These guys have to get a lot of credit. Everybody working together because we ran for over 300 yards, and Nick Chubb went out after 6 carries in this game and 40-plus yards. I mean, that's incredible to me.
Absolutely. The thing that was fun when I sat down in the meeting room almost every day when I was learning this offense in 2014 was it was very hierarchical. And, normally the silo structure, people don't like that in businesses, right? Because, you got a boss and he's telling you what to do, blah, 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 But this was great because you had an offensive coordinator who knew everything. And he would tell exactly the offensive line, the receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs exactly what he wanted. And he knew it. And there's very few offensive coordinators that can coach up an offensive line just the way the offensive line coach can coach them up from a technique and a scheme standpoint. Same thing with the running back group, because most coordinators don't have experience in those rooms. Like I mentioned, they're either receivers coaches or they've been quarterbacks coaches. They don't have the expertise on the offensive line, and so they're never able to see the big picture of how everything fits together like a puzzle. And so to have a unit where Kevin understands everybody and he's able to dictate exactly what he wants to all of his coaches, and then his coaches need a lot of credit for being able to get all the players on the same page, like you mentioned, because what happened to Nick Chubb was very unfortunate, but it's going to happen in the NFL. Like, injuries are just a part of the game, and so you have to have that next man up mentality where the standard doesn't change, and you've also been grooming those 2s, 3s, and 4s for their moment. So when they do get that moment, it's not oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing, where's my helmet? It's like I've been waiting for this moment because I know exactly what I need to do. I know what the standard is, and I know how to go out and do it. So credit to the players, credit to the coaches, credit to everybody involved for having such an amazing performance and having guys ready to step up when the number is called.
And we'll talk about the defense as we go on. But one last thing I want to talk about the offense. Now that we've been in the film room breaking down the all 22, Joe, is 49, honestly? It seems like maybe a low number for what the tape would show was out on the field for this offense.
Well, yeah, they took the foot off the gas a little bit in the second half. I mean, just because the score was so sideways. But had it been a true shootout the whole way through, like we kind of thought going in, I mean, they may have scored 60 because there was no stopping that offense when it was a balanced offense. And it got a little bit unbalanced, when all of a sudden you're in your 4-minute offense halfway through the third quarter, you're trying to kill the clock. So you're not calling the plays with the same rhythm that you normally would because you are trying to shorten the game at that point. But had it been a closer game the whole way through where you're still kind of balanced on offense, you're still taking shots, you're still running, you're still throwing, they may have scored 60. It would have been even more embarrassing for those boys in blue down south.
Joe, last one, we got to get out of here. But Odell Beckham Jr., to have that game. We talked last week about him coming back and breaking up the interception and celebrating with Harrison Bryant on his touchdown. This was the Odell Beckham breakout game. And it could have been more. To Nathan's point, it could have been more. He had a double move that would have been 6 if he wanted it there. But this is a great player playing in a great game on the biggest stage, and it's who you traded for, frankly. And I'm just thrilled for him, and I'm sure you are as well as a fellow great player, seeing somebody finally healthy, getting to be able to do all that he's capable of.
Yeah, I'm so happy for Odell. I didn't really know him at all when he was in New York, but I talked to guys in the locker room, and they're like, he's nothing like the public perception of Odell. He's not a diva like that. He's a really hard worker. He's a team-first guy. Yeah, he's had the antic moments when he was younger that he had a little bit of immaturity there, but that's not who he is day to day. And when he came to Cleveland, like, there was some questions when he first got here, right? Because we didn't have the success, but he has been an unbelievable professional from the moment he got to Cleveland, and he's put any of the antics that he had behind him from New York, and it seems like he's matured a little bit. And I'm so happy for him because we joked on Victory Monday about pure joy and how great we feel, but listening to Odell after the game talk about that throw from Jarvis, I don't know if you guys heard that interview after the game where he was just talking about, like, it felt like them playing pitch and catch when they were kids, and I heard that, and I was like, this is a man that has found true happiness. And not all of us can say that, and I don't know if he's had that throughout his career, but I know he's found that right now, and the maturity that he's found since he's landed in Cleveland and the happiness that he has on this team right now, I feel so happy for him because, yes, he is a great player, but I think unfairly a little bit throughout his career, he's been maybe maligned a little bit in the media. But hopefully now people are understanding the professionalism that he's carrying himself with and that it's paying off with not only team success, but also his own personal enjoyment and success. And this was absolutely his Cleveland Browns coming out game.
Yeah, it was fun. If your game plan for the season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services has you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today. We will hand out some game balls coming up next. It is the Joe Thomas Hour in Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of the Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at weshiring.com. It is the Joe Thomas Hour, and the Hoff is with us, and we're going to hand out some game balls first. And Mr. Thomas, we will start with you. Your first game ball goes to whom, sir?
I got to go with Myles Garrett. I know the obvious one is the offensive performance with rushing over 300 yards, but Myles was such a big part of that game. Another strip sack fumble. I think he had 2 sacks on the game, and so dominant. And he's been so important because our secondary is kind of figuring things out still, working on the communication issues. They've not been great on all the different route concepts. And to have a guy that can kind of erase some of those mistakes up front like Myles is just amazing. And I think half of this game ball should go to the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. I'm not sure if that's Mike McCarthy or if that's somebody else right now, but to allow your rookie undrafted right tackle free agent to go one-on-one with Myles Garrett early on in that game was absolutely the most insane coaching decision I've ever seen in my entire life, and we all knew how that story was going to end.
How about the best part of that is that's how they set him up, and then they benched him like it was his fault.
Yeah, like, so, hey, you can't block Myles Garrett by yourself. That's your
You're
fault.
out. That's your fault. You're benched.
Yeah, he's the best option. I don't know if you noticed, but after Myles abused poor Dak and that right tackle several times, they did not allow him to be blocked one-on-one the rest of the entire game. Every single time after that, they had a running back, a tight end, or a slide coming in that direction. So they were absolutely not going to let Myles break any type of sack record that day, because if they would have kept him on that island, he certainly would have had 6 or 8 sacks.
And that's what was the genius of Joe Woods' blitz in the third quarter when MJ Stewart ended up getting the sack, is they moved Myles over to the other side. They still doubled him even when Tyron Smith was over there. And so MJ Stewart and Ronnie Harrison, it was the two of them on a running back because they were so worried about Myles on the same side. It was brilliant and got a good sack out of that.
That's a great point, Nathan. And I think that's a great point for fans to understand. It's like when you look at Myles' stats, maybe at the end of the game, he might not have any sacks, but the impact is felt in other areas. Like you put Myles over Tyron Smith, who I think Tyron's been one of the best tackles in the game for a decade plus. He's fantastic. He's unbelievable in pass pro, but they were even giving him help. They were turning their offensive line to help Tyron against Myles. And when you do that, you open yourself up and you expose yourself in other areas, and you become predictable because they know which direction the line is going to turn. They know where the running back is going to go. And so that gives the defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, an opportunity to dial up blitzes where he knows what's going to happen and he knows the matchup he's going to get. And so even though Myles always isn't getting the sacks you may have hoped, he's having a big impact because of the predictability that he pulls out of an offense and the way he kind of handcuffs them a little bit and flips the balance of power towards the defensive coordinator.
Game ball, Z.
D. Ernest Johnson. And to see him get this opportunity, I know we've got to be quick, so I'll just say it again. He looked like a superstar running back, and part of it's the system, but he made, you go back and watch the tape, some of the cuts he makes, some of the patience he shows, some of the explosion, tremendous.
I'm going to split my first game ball amongst 2 Cleveland natives, and I'm going to go Kareem Hunt and Denzel Ward. Neither one was 100%. Neither one of those guys was 100%. But both of them were incredibly courageous, made big-time plays, played hard, played with heart. Denzel getting the game interception where he just jumps the route to ice it, and Kareem playing with a groin that's obviously not everything that he wants it to be, but still just such a violent, fast runner and just elite. I like both those guys. We've talked so much about the offensive line and so many of the other highlights. Certainly that is all there.
Yeah,
I can't read your lips. Go ahead, Z.
I can't read his lips either, but I think we may have lost Joe, is what I think
just
he's
back. Get online with us.
He's back.
Now he's back.
Just like that.
All right, we got 2 minutes for the last game ball. Everybody a piece. Go, Joe, your second game ball.
So I missed Nathan's first game ball, but I'm going to just give it to the offensive line. Obviously, he rushed for 300 yards. They are all deserving of a game ball.
Odell Beckham Jr. deserves a game ball. The guy had 3 touchdowns as the best player on the field. Give him a game ball. Here you go.
Perfect.
I'm going to go with his running mate, Jarvis Landry. We'll get my second game ball. 3 third-down catches, huge in the run game, including one that was just unbelievable, where he comes back to the ball. The guy's all over him. Would have been defensive pass interference. Somehow snares it, picks up 11. He's in the run game. He's annihilating people on the edges when he's blocking. I just can't believe. Well, I can because I know what Jarvis is all about. And then to be able to crow hop and throw it 50 yards on the screws to Odell Beckham Jr. on a laser. I was just so happy for all of them, and I know that I'm sure it's a frustrating start to the season for all those guys on the edges, but for them to be able to get involved a little bit and have some fun and get a win, you think about the buy-in Jarvis has had since he's got here, and to see it kind of all come to fruition yesterday, throwing to one of his best friends was absolutely awesome. You could give game balls to a lot of people, but I like the ones that we've given out today. We'll play a little word association on the other side of this quick time out. This is the Joe Thomas Hour of Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.